Please silence your cell phones and welcome everyone to this May 21st meeting of the Pascagoula City Council. Before we begin, I'd like to ask Jennifer Calmer to lead us in an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance by Scott Tipton.
Everyone will stand and bow their heads. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for bringing us here again this evening, and thank you for the opportunity to serve our city. I ask that you will be with us this evening and let us handle this meeting with grace and with professionalism. I ask that you'll be with us as we make every decision that affects everyone in this city. I pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. Are there any amendments to the agenda from either the city manager or any of the council members?
I would like to remove 6G just for a little more explanation from Jackson on
Okay.
exactly what it is.
You anticipated my request, and Scott, let's move that to item 7A under the city manager's items. Josh Eldridge, our Chancery Clerk, is here to talk about a job description that the city is contemplating for city manager. And so I would like to add him as item 5C under community recognition.
I don't think that's exactly why he's here.
Okay.
He's here to speak about the comptroller.
Okay. Well,
So just so we get it correct in the minutes.
he's here to speak. So,
Yes, he is.
all right. Any other amendments to the agenda?
We're adding 5C, we will not. We're adding or we're not?
Adding to 5C, yes. Any other amendments?
I have two, Mr. Burrow. The first would be to remove item 6E from the consent agenda of the resolution regarding flood insurance renewals. And the other one would be to remove potential sale or lease of land from executive session.
All right. Anything else?
Ryan, could I get you to add when you remove the flood insurance? And the chief may be able to answer this real quickly, but I noticed we had contents of 50,000 at both Lake and Jackson Avenue, and we only had 6,000 on contents at Bayou Casada. Is that correct? Should that be correct?
I would think that we're talking about the interior contents, yeah.
Okay.
That'd be fairly accurate.
So you think we still need 50 at Lake, though?
Probably not.
Okay. But if you
I'll
would,
get with
while
you.
you're checking on
I will.
some of that other stuff, please.
I'll reach out to you
ask them
tomorrow.
Check on that.
Yes, sir.
Any further proposed amendments? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Community recognition, or is anybody here from the Mayor's Youth Council? Okay, no one here. Our business spotlight tonight is City Electric, and I believe we have a video for everyone here and hopefully those of you watching on Facebook.
Out of 490 stores nationwide, there is only one City Electric Supply in Mississippi, and it's right here in Pascagoula on the corner of Hospital and Shortcut Roads. One of the things they enjoy most about their location in Pascagoula is that they are open to the public through their retail operation, where you can walk in and find anything from a wire nut to a generator and everything in between. City Electric Supply is proud to serve clients in the residential, commercial, industrial, and utility spaces across the coast, and employees work hard to fulfill any order, large or small. Another thing that sets them apart from other electric suppliers is their ability to keep items in stock in their large storefront and warehouse, and they are open on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to noon. Thank you to City Electric Supply for servicing the residents and businesses of Pascagoula.
And I want to make every effort to encourage everyone here and listening at home. It gets very easy, and perhaps I'm guilty of it as much as anyone, if you're lazy to go to Lowe's to get something, but we do have plenty of plumbing supply stores, City Electric, and other home needs stores that should be patronized by everyone who's here and is listening on Facebook. So encourage you to throw your business to the guys at City Electric. Brian 1 and Brian 2 are certainly some very good guys and deserve our support. All right, that moves us to item number 5C on the agenda, and we want to welcome our Chancery Clerk, Josh Eldridge, and certainly ask that you come up and address this council.
Thank y'all for inviting me. Yeah, I'd been reached out to by one of your councilmen, kind of asked my thoughts on the city was considering, restructuring how their comptroller is structured in the city. Currently, what I understand is that the comptroller falls under the city manager, and I was told that y'all had considered possibly having the comptroller be hired and answered straight to the board, which is similar to how the county does it. So I kind of went through it and looked at it, and I think y'all have Miss Charlene here that's also a CPA, and I think has been recently hired by the board to help with the finances. And to me, the council, there's no perfect answer on how to set things up. There's not an unlimited supply of money to make sure you're always getting the right financial information. But it's your responsibility to try to mitigate all your risk. Make sure you're getting the most accurate and best information you can. And this would not be anything against any employee, any city manager. I would recommend this for anybody. You got to mitigate your risk. So if you look at how the county used to be structured, everything fell under the Chancery Clerk. Some issues happened, 20 years ago or so. State Audit Department come in and said, look, y'all got too much responsibility under one person. So they took and divided the responsibilities and set up a finance department and had a comptroller that answered directly to the board. And it was set up that way since that time. And like I said, things always are not perfect, but the board has two people to go focus to. I mean, in our case, we have several. When I left comptroller, become Chancery Clerk, there was discussion, hey, you're going to take finance with you? I said, no. I mean, you need somebody there to hold me accountable. You need checks and balances in place. And when everybody answers to one person, it just sometimes you may not get all the information that you want to receive. That person's job depends on the person above him. Where the person, if you have a comptroller that answers directly to the board, you've kind of got the city manager there to check that balance. Watch over, split the duties, split the responsibilities. I think I can't imagine the responsibility the city manager has here in Pascagoula. I mean, he's got all the employees, he's got all the different departments. He's working, answering, doing everything for the board. It's a ton of responsibility. I don't know how much time they have just to focus on the financial department. My recommendation is always to have a financial person answer directly to the board. Exactly who to go to. We've seen it, in other examples, our hospital system several years back. Everything went through the CEO. Things happen. I bet a lot of people wanted those answers to come directly from the financial person instead of through the funnel that it goes through. So and I think, Miss Charlene, I know she's tons of municipal experience, and she can tell you. It's just, it never seems to work properly when all the responsibility goes through one person. And, you may have the most honest, best city manager in the world right now, but who knows 4 years from now, who knows 10 years from now, at some point in time when there's a problem that happens, there's gonna be he said, she said, you know, it's better to mitigate your risk, have segregation of duties. I think anybody would recommend, any accountant would recommend that structure.
Let me ask you, Josh, from a practical standpoint, how does it work at the county in terms of supervising the comptroller? Obviously, the supervisors are part-time positions. They're not in a position to monitor what somebody is doing on a daily basis. Does the county administrator act as the supervisor from a personnel standpoint? I mean, how does it work?
In the county, your board attorney, and I would assume y'all probably similar like that, where at one point your board attorney probably was directly to the board, and then your city manager was directly to the board, and then everybody else probably fell under the city manager. In the county, your road manager falls directly under the board, the comptroller falls directly under the board, the county administrator, and the board attorney. You know, and then you have elected officials out there. But it would same as y'all do with your city manager, and if your attorney was separate, you answer to the board. You know, you answer to the majority of the board.
I guess my question is, and I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate because I'm sympathetic to, you know, having the comptroller broken out and appointed by the council, but in terms of simple things like compliance with employee requirements, making sure that person is doing their job or working 8 or 9 hours a day, however long it is, at least the benefit, as I see it, of a single person, be it a county administrator or a city manager, is there's one-stop shopping. That person supervises, in theory, every person in that government agency or government body, whereas as you know, part-time people, I'm not going to be supervising. Neither is Scott or anyone else going to be supervising a comptroller on a day-to-day basis. And I just was wondering, how does that work at your level? Is it just simply that the burden falls upon us as the governing body to exercise more authority and discretion in supervising that individual? Or are some of those functions broken out where everybody's sort of looking out at everyone else who's doing their job?
Absolutely. It would fall more on the board. More responsibility would fall on the board, but you know, you already have that responsibility with your city manager. You know, I mean, you already have. You know, if you had a board attorney separate, that responsibility would fall on you. And also your comptroller, I mean, is going to be working with your assistant city manager every day. They're going to let you know, Josh ain't showed up about half a day all week, you know. Yeah. And that responsibility, I mean, it's not easy. So, I mean, if your comptroller is not acting properly, I mean, that first 6 months, he needs to be gone, or he or she needs to be gone. I mean, you got to take. It's not. You know, it's easier, absolutely, to get rid of somebody under the city manager. You just say city manager, which also makes it sometimes harder to get a good applicant. You know, because they also know, hey, if I'm going to quit my job at Ingalls and come over here and be the comptroller, first argument I have with the city manager, I could be gone. I mean, not saying he would do that, but just saying. Whereas when you're applying for a job, say I work for a board, I know as long as I'm doing my job and I'm telling them the truth, it's going to take 4 of them to get rid of me.
You would think. It should be.
Right. So I'm just telling you from an accounting standpoint, you know, the safest way, best way. You know, from an operational standpoint, you know, that's on y'all to decide. Can y'all take the responsibility of providing some oversight and working with your city manager and assistant city manager and making sure, but put it on your city I mean, like I said, how many employees do y'all have?
The council?
I mean, the city manager. Over 200, you know, so, I mean, that's a lot of people to oversee, so,
Josh,
council would have to.
What is the budget at the county?
About $125 million, you know, depending on, you know, what all you want to throw in, between $125 million, $150 million.
Depending on grants and stuff.
Did you reach out to someone that you thought may be a good candidate for our
Yeah,
comptroller
yeah. I mean, Frank reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you know of anybody that may be qualified? That may, you know, I I knew a gentleman that was with the state audit department. I reached out to him, and, you know, that was one of the first things he says, well, look, you know, I'm answering to one person. You know, I still got a few years left. You know, it's just more risk, you know, when you come answer to one person. Now, I highly said, man, you don't have to worry about that. You got a good, great city manager there.
I'd worry more about politicians changing every 4 years.
Yeah, that's my point, yeah.
So, in your opinion, the method we use, is that the best practice? And I've heard you say it's not, but
Right,
just to simply ask.
not for accounting and audit purposes, you know, yeah, I can give you tons of examples, but, you know, I'm assuming your city manager or assistant city manager is responsible. I think by statute, your city manager is responsible for preparing your budget, okay? He prepares the budget, presents it to the board. So he presents it to the board, and he forgot to put some new debt service millage on because, you know, it was just an oversight. It was new debt service, forgot to do it. Well, everything goes wrong for about 6 months. Well, it's time to make that debt service payment. He goes, dadgummit, I forgot to add that millage in there. Okay, only reason he knows about it is because the comptroller come to him and said, hey, I'm trying to pay this bill from the debt service fund. There ain't no revenue in there. Well, does that city manager run to you and say, hey, I messed the budget up, we're in the hole $750,000 now? Well, hopefully so. But does the comptroller come tell you? Well, if the city manager didn't want to tell you, if he comes and tells you, I mean, it just puts them in a bad position. You know, I don't think everybody knows too much power in one position is, you know, from a financial standpoint, it's not good. You know, but the same reason when you're with your finance department, you got to have segregation of duties. The same person can't be receipting in, cutting checks, reconciling your bank statements. You know, we trust everybody, but you got to audit them too. You got to limit their power. You know, so.
Well, and to respond to what Stephen asked, I don't know how many days of work, and I guess Ryan would be the only person that reports to us. I don't know how many days of work he misses, or how many days a week he's here, so.
I trust you. I mean, if somebody's not coming to work, y'all gonna hear about it. I mean, unless y'all a lot different than the county, you know. If my truck's not in my parking spot, you know, about 2 days, somebody's saying, where's Josh at, you know? So I believe your city manager and your assistant city manager, even though they may not hire and fire them, they're gonna say, hey guys, these guys ain't showing up to work, you know? Or these reports that I'm requesting, they're not giving them to me. And they're gonna say, you know, y'all need to do something about this.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions from any other council member?
Well, I mean, I have things I'd like to say, but Josh doesn't necessarily have to stand there for
Okay.
me to say them.
Okay.
Yeah, and
All right.
Ms. Charlene, she may have something to add to it. Like I said, I know she's a CPA and she's been doing this for way longer than I have. But we just, you know,
The
always.
only thing I'd like to address is possibly your issue of supervising the comptroller. What you'd end up with if you decided to elevate that position would be you would end up with effectively the city manager. It's usually less like a salaried employee, and as long as the work is getting done, you wouldn't be having to worry about whether or not they're there from 8 o'clock to 5, because they would probably be there from 8 o'clock to 12, which is the job to do. But you know, there would not be a lot of micromanaging. There shouldn't be a lot of micromanaging. If you have to micromanage the comptroller, then you've got the wrong person for the job.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh.
So I'm
Is
gonna
there-
pass these down. I have several points that I put
Okay.
on just a memo to everybody. And, they just, basically, Pascagoula is the largest city in Mississippi with a council manager form of government and most likely has the largest budget of these cities. Yet we do not follow best practices with our finances by taking the very simple step of providing a very simple safeguard. And I say that because we've gone to great lengths to try to correct and handle the financial issues of the city. This is one of the most important safeguards for our taxpayers' money and it's one of the easiest structural fixes we can do, yet nobody wants to do it. When I brought it up before, it was a solid 5-1, and I was the only one who wanted to do this. And before, the reason I'm bringing it up is because before we approve the city manager job description, this falls under that city manager job description. And if a competent professional leaves his or her job to come here and be our comptroller, and we have the current city manager, and we're looking for a city manager, we hire them under the current city manager, we get a new city manager, then they're going to be worried about losing their job. A competent professional is not going to come here knowing that they could lose their job. This makes sense. This is like, can anybody at
I
this,
agree with you, it does make sense.
can anybody here give me one downside to doing this? Besides, it may fall under us and we may have to oversee somebody. That we may have to do a little more work. Because that's what we were elected to do, a little work. So can anybody give me a downside? To protect our taxpayer dollars and not go through what we have just been through. And here are the numbers before you. And some of these cities do not have the same form of government we do have, but 2 of them do. And I highlighted them, I put them in bold print. Their comptroller reports to the city manager as far as on a day-to-day basis, but they can go, they're hired and fired by the board, by the council, sorry.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, Josh, for coming. I'm sure we'll be discussing this.
Thank you, Josh.
As we go forward. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Is there any question about any item that remains on the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the items that remain on the consent agenda?
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Sir.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. City manager, city attorney, this is the resolution approving the proposal and terms and conditions for professional services for Road Biotics, Inc. And I guess if you don't mind whether you or Jackie speak, first of all, can you explain what it is that we're getting Road Biotics to do? It was not apparent from the agreement.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Burrow, I'll just give you a little bit of background on how we ended up with them and what we've done in order to recommend this to you. Myself and Mr. Corder, generally when we receive emails from potential vendors, give it a passing glance, but for whatever reason, Frank and I had just been talking about how we could objectively look at what roads need to be repaired and which roads, or prioritize roads. I guess it may have spawned off of some of the conversations that we'd had previously. So a couple months back, Mr. Corder and I had a video conference with a female from Robotics, and we really liked the presentation, but one of the items, which I will talk about after Jackie speaks about, that I don't even think Robotics thought was a selling point, which what was a selling point for us is the photographs that these cars take every 10 feet. So anyhow, Frank and I liked the proposal, or liked this company, thought it was beneficial, had them send us the proposal, immediately sent it over to Jackie, or Miss Turner, and asked for Ms. Turner and Ms. Nicholson to vet this proposal because, in her words, and I'm paraphrasing, we get those all of the time. And Jackie was, I would say, pretty stringent on this, like she always is on certain things. But after Jackie looked at it and looked at the proposal and spoke with, I believe it's a Mr. Witt, who is now the contact at Robotics, and talked through some additional items potentially to be added to the proposal that neither Mr. Corder nor I thought about. Jackie came back to us and said, here it is. We like it. And so Jackie can tell you how it benefits what she believes, and then I can, Frank or I'll clean up wherever she misses.
So I'll add a little bit to that. When we first started talking about this, I was actually kind of opposed to the idea because we have a pretty good inventory of historically what streets are a problem, what are not. We get feedback from every council member regularly. We get feedback from residents regularly. So it seemed to me to be excessive to go and, spend additional money and time to have an index done. So I kind of challenged it to begin with. And then I also said, well, what if we could find somebody who's closer or better price? I think those are good things to look at. And of course, they agreed immediately with that. And so we started investigating. Chandra looked into basically every company that she could find, definitely in the Southeast, probably in the nation, and even in some in Canada, who wanted to offer similar services. And there's a wide range of what's available. Most of the companies use a pretty sophisticated set of equipment that basically rides the roads, meters vibrations and bumps and all this kind of thing, and assigns characteristics of a road based on all of that. But what they don't do is exactly the photographs that Ryan was talking about. Since we do have a good inventory of what needs to be done, and on top of that, further, that none of these companies provide, we have a pretty good understanding of what infrastructure is under a road. And we don't want to make a recommendation to replace something if we know 2 years down the road we're going to have to tear it up again. So there's that component that none of these companies can evaluate. Every company that could provide the level of data that this road analysis offers, which is basically a summary of all defects in the road, anything that would indicate a rough ride, anything that would indicate a failing pavement, failing base, are all integrated into these analyses of photos, and they very quickly provide you with a GIS-based rating of the condition of your road system. So within just a couple short months, not a year, 2 years, 3 years of analysis, we have a picture that you can look at, we can look at, you can show your constituents. This is a fair analysis of road conditions. So what one resident might consider horrific compared to another resident thinks is acceptable may be the exact same conditions, and this is personality free. This is based on data. And you can truly look at these roads and compare them and be able to tell what's in good condition and what's not. All the companies that provide this service average about a mobilization fee in the neighborhood of about $35,000. We don't touch it for less than that, and then your data collection goes up from there. Most of them will not deal with a municipality our size. You'd have to compile at least a full county, if not more than one. The companies that we investigated that work for MDOT have no interest in working in a city this small. And then they provide this very complicated, very detailed set of data that we probably would not have money to address anyway. So it's spending a lot of money to put a list together that we can't do anything with, whereas this company is very cost effective. They provide a lot of data in a very short amount of time, and they honestly were surprised at our intent. Our primary intent, honestly, is to get these photos every 10 feet of every street that we have. Not only will that cover road conditions, but it covers curb and gutter conditions, it covers sidewalks, it covers street lights, it covers street signals, it covers signs. Yeah. When we respond to a disaster, there are a number of times we tried to explain to MEMA and FEMA that we had all these signs that were damaged or signal lights that were damaged. You talk about the shades that go around your signal poles. You have the 3 lights, and then some of them they have that's to keep the sun out of your eyes. We tell FEMA that was damaged. Well, do you have pictures of what it looked like a month before?
Oh,
No.
we're all familiar with that.
Because we don't have time to send people out every May and take pictures of every asset that we have. This covers that. This covers that. May, June, every year, if we renew this contract, we get pictures every 10 feet of every street that we have. And if we find it to be valuable, we've discussed with them the possibility of adding the equipment they use can be mounted on a gator, go through our easements. It can be mounted on a boat that can go through all of our bayous. And it would be at the same linear foot price under the contract. So if we find this stuff to be valuable, we see lots of opportunities to expand this into things that would prove beneficial, we think, cost-wise, if we get one claim out of FEMA. In addition to that, then we get all this road data, which is wonderful, and it's very quickly provided that we can incorporate into our budget process and 10-year planning.
Let me ask you a few questions about the proposal that I didn't quite get. You said that it do photographs of every 10 feet, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's of every street or something. Did I get that right?
Essentially, they ride every street that we have and take a picture through the dashboard,
Okay,
every 10 feet.
But on the proposal specifically, it says that the network mileage is 146. Do we only have 146 miles of streets and avenues and boulevards in Pascagoula? I would have thought it would be more.
I think that's pretty close. I think we estimated somewhere in the neighborhood of 160 to 170, but the way that we analyze it, our center line data includes, like, for instance, when you go from Hospital Road across Highway, or every turn where you turn in a center across Highway 90 includes that footage. So we think we have a little more. This proposal is based on the miles that are actually done.
Okay, so, but at the end of the day, what the hope or the plan or the expectation is that we would have photographs and data on, what, 95% of the roads in the city? Is that a fair statement?
I think the intent is to have 100%.
Okay, all right, well, I mean, you said 146, 160, I'm trying to give the benefit
Well,
of the doubt.
and if it
so-
ends up being 150, then we'll do 150, and it's based on a per mile rate.
Okay, and the numbers here, I see 146, and then the per mile rate is 100 per mile, and then there's an annual fee. Is that on top of the per mile rate? So we're looking at about $28,000 for the year, or is it just coming up to 14?
No, I think that's a total of their estimate for the year.
Total of the estimate, okay. All right. And the other question I had was, I received an email, several people received an email, I think, this afternoon from Ken Taylor, the supervisor for a large part of Pascagoula. And apparently the county is doing something, or has done something very similar through South Mississippi Planning and Development District, specifically with Leonard Bentz. And again, I don't mean to show my ignorance here, but they put in a proposal that looks the same as this, and he thought it might be something to consider. I was wondering if you had had an opportunity to look at that, and is it something that should be considered? And I want to do it from the standpoint of, if we can do it with South Mississippi Planning versus, nothing against Road Biotics, but they are from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If we can do it with somebody local, obviously I think everybody here would like to do it with somebody local if possible.
Sure, we did look at their proposal and their options. My understanding is that they are also going to subcontract with people that are not local to provide some of the data. They're also doing that in-depth, full analysis, including recommendations of planning. They're not going to provide the 10-foot pictures. They have a streaming video that they kind of gather that is not nearly as comprehensive. One thing that we added to this proposal that they didn't initially provide is, for a pretty nominal rate, we are actually going to get several terabytes worth of data that we can put on our backed up servers that we back up off-site, so that if we need to come back and look at something 8 years from now, that data will be ours, not just a hit or miss video, which we find very valuable. I expect the county's contract looks like it's supposed to cover parts of the city, if not all of it as well. It looks like it's covering everything in the county, and I think that the data they're providing will be very valuable, but I don't expect we're going to see anything in a matter of 90 days. What we're looking at here is getting a snapshot essentially at the beginning of this hurricane season, immediately.
In the other, if I can, add something to that, Mr. Bro. The other side of it that, that we thought was also going to be beneficial, and I don't want to say it takes out the subjectivity, but it kind of does, is that, this kind of dumbs down the material. So what you will get is you will get a color-coded map of the streets, and they will be green as in not a priority to be repaired, yellow as in probably needs to be repaired, and red is in trouble. And we can put that on our website, share that information. And what Jackie's saying is that when we obtain that information, it becomes ours. That can be changed, manipulated, updated by us as fixed. And so it's going to be specific to the city of Pascagoula.
I think the attachment that we received from Supervisor Taylor also included very detailed information about what they're providing. I did not see a schedule. I may have overlooked it, but also a price, and what they're looking at starts. Their mobilization essentially is more expensive than what we look at paying for the entire year.
Okay. I don't mean to monopolize everything. I apologize. Anybody else on council have any questions for Jackie? I'm not making a motion yet, but I'd like to make a suggestion, and Jackie, I'd like to hear from you and from the city manager. Next week, we're planning on having a workshop to discuss issues regarding roads and trying to prioritize some of the infrastructure issues that the city faces. And hopefully, that this council collectively would come up with a priority list as opposed to, each one of us sort of perhaps focusing on issues that are pertinent to our respective wards. What I would like to do is table this for the first meeting in June. And what I'd like to do, while it may be apples and oranges, what I'd like to do is at least give us a chance to sort of prioritize and have that discussion amongst ourselves. But in the meantime, if you would indulge me, I would like to know if you can find out from the county what streets will be surveyed here, or if they have made that decision yet. And I guess here's what I'm thinking. I don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish, but at the same time, I don't want to necessarily duplicate efforts either. If they're going to do something that will be available to us, and maybe it's 80% of what we want, but yet we don't have to incur the expense of doing it, that's something that might be kind of valuable to me, just
Sure.
looking at it from a financial standpoint.
I think from the perspective of road evaluation, I would tend to probably agree with you, especially if their schedule is more accelerated than I expect it will be. The place that I feel like it's important to move forward on this one now, or as quickly as possible, is the presentation of the photographic data. The county's proposal definitely is not providing that. And even if we do not renew this next year or the following year, to be able to get a full snapshot of all of our infrastructure this year as hurricane season is starting, I think is beneficial regardless of the road data. And then we can evaluate if the road data we get versus the road data the county's getting is worth doing it again. I mean,
Okay.
that's my thought, but of course, whatever you'd like to do.
Can I add to that? I think we should table it as well, but let's just table it till next week. And if we can vote on this next week, vote on it then, because this proposal only goes through the 31st of May.
If we can do it next week, that's fine. I didn't know if we had to give a notice, since we may be taking action at that meeting, but
So
I'll
long-
defer to you.
So long as, if all we're doing, item 10, what we recommend unite to do is to recess, then absolutely wouldn't be a special called meeting. There's nothing that you could
And
not do at the next meeting that you couldn't do at a normal meeting, so long as you follow.
And if we can get some answers regarding the comparison on the county's information, I'll see if we can't
Yeah.
get that shared with y'all electronically ahead of time so that you can
Yeah.
have that to evaluate.
And it may be that what the county is doing might not fit our needs. I understand that. I don't mean any disrespect to the county, but, there may be issues that we have that they don't have, or maybe they're focusing more on unincorporated areas than we're trying to focus on our own city. Those are just questions I have
Sure.
that perhaps in the next week we can
And
answer.
I expect that their final product data will be very similar to ours, and I expect it's going to be very valuable. I think that the big hinge point is that they're not providing the pictures, and they can't provide it on the schedule that we're looking at. So I will get that information specifically and share it with you so we can look at it next week.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Frederick, Ms. Jackie, is there any particular you'll be looking at for these roads to qualify to be on your list? Or what are we looking for?
Yeah.
Entire city? Okay,
That would cover every mile in the city.
okay, thank you.
All right, so for purposes of the minutes, I'd like to move to table the proposal terms and conditions for professional services for Road Biotics, Inc., until the meeting next week, the special meeting until May 28, 2019. Is there a second?
Second.
What time? Same.
It'd be 6 o'clock is when that meeting is. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I think that is the last item before the docket of claims, and I'm going to have to step out since I have a client with an item on that, and I'll leave it in the hands of Reverend Jones.
I forgot his name. Mr. Barrow. Yeah, I forgot his name. No, I'm just kidding. Can we get a motion to approve the claim docket?
Make a motion, we approve the claims docket.
Second.
Second?
Ms. Comer.
Second.
Second. Yeah.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, I'm not aware of any items under 10 for mayor council items. So that'll bring us now to the executive session. Is there a motion to go into a closed session to determine whether or not an executive session is necessary?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. We'll go now to a closed session. We appreciate your attention. We appreciate your attendance if you are here. We will have what I believe to be an important meeting next week, at which the council will have a work session with staff to discuss priorities for infrastructure, road repair, road maintenance, and so forth, and hopefully that we collectively can come up with a priority list for our staff to implement going forward. But other than that, you're welcome to stay until after executive session is over. If you're not, then I bid you good night and thank you for coming.